Okay, we're live. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the 1455 interview. We're hitting 2021 with a full head of steam, and I'm excited to continue this series. And I'm really excited today. We have our second husband-wife writer tag team. Following last year, we spoke with Karen E. Bender and Robert Anthony Siegel. And today, I'm going back-to-back with the husband and wife team of Tara Laskowski and Art Taylor. We'll get to Art later. For now, our featured guest is Tara. I'm going to read her bio and introduce her, and I'll just say at the outset, we were just talking before, we have some significant overlap in terms of our local writing community, so it's a particular delight to finally have an opportunity to chat with both of these writers because I've heard about them and admired them for a long time, so this is a very meaningful opportunity for me. So without further ado, Tara's debut suspense novel, One Night Gone, won the Agatha Award, Macavity Award, and the Anthony Award, and was a finalist for the Lefty, the Simon & Schuster Mary Higgins Clark, the Strand Critics, and the Library of Virginia Awards. She's also written 2 short story collections, Modern Manners for Your Inner Demons, which is a great title, and Bystanders. She's had stories published in numerous magazines and anthologies, and she was the winner of the 2010 Santa Fe Writers Project's Literary Awards Prize, was the longtime editor of the popular online flash fiction journal SmokeLong Quarterly, which I heartily endorse. Love that outlet. She's a member of Sisters in Crime, Mystery Writers of America, and International Thriller Writers. She and her husband, Art Taylor, write the column Long Story Short at the Washington Independent Review of Books. Tara, thank you for being here. It is wonderful to dialogue with you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Right on. Well, you told me you were prepared, so let's get it on. I'm gonna I'll set our timer, although I never enforce this, but we'll put you on the clock for 14 minutes and 55 seconds. I'll start with the big question. What is the first book that made you want to be a writer, or what book changed your life?
So I'm already gonna cheat.
I encourage that.
And I'm gonna pick 2 short stories because I distinctly remember reading these short stories in high school. And that, like, reading those, okay, so that they are A&P by John Updike and The Swimmer, the John Cheever story. And I read those 2, and I don't know, I forget like kind of what else we read in high school, but reading those 2 contemporary pieces, it like was a light bulb that went off in my head that was like, oh, I can write about things that like I personally have experienced, that like you can have an epiphany like being a grocery store clerk, in the middle of summer. And that was like the first time that I felt like literature like was accessible to me in a different way, and that I could write it and still like have these tiny moments mean bigger things.
Right on. And, I've talked in this series, people of, for lack of a better cliche, a certain age, we really did come up where, Cheever and Updike were just, de rigueur as far as the influences you got starting in high school. And those names resurfaced repeatedly, I think, for good reason. So I'm not surprised to hear their name check. Who would you say, if you could say, your most profound artistic influences?
So I took that question to mean like in general where you get like your kind of your influence or inspiration. And for me, like I feel like I'm a patchwork in some ways where like I never know kind of what's going to inspire me or what's going to end up like meaning something, that I take with me. So like I can overhear, a piece of dialogue, like somebody talking on the street, or we watch a movie and there's something really cool in the movie that I like, or read a book and I'm just like, oh my gosh, the way this person does atmosphere is so awesome. Or, even the places that we travel, like I always feel like I'm very inspired by those. And I find it really interesting how like I could overhear something and then it ends up in my like the chapter I'm writing the next day in some way. And I feel like I'm almost like walking through life, like, and that like what I write is going to be based on like what I saw that day in the walk or something like that. And there's something really cool about that. And there's also something kind of scary about that too, So
I
I
think
don't know if that's like the right answer for this, but like that's kind of what I was thinking about when you asked that question. I'm like, I
it's a
don't know.
perfect answer. I think it's really honest. It actually, Frank, like goes deeper than it's. I think it's totally appropriate and fine and illuminating to name an artist, that an individual artist that has been inspiring, but talking about the life of the writer and what makes us tick. It's that combination of being kind of flypaper, and I think there's always that curiosity and empathy that never gets turned off, and you just have to cultivate that balance so that it doesn't become obsessive, but is instructive and illuminating. But then the subconscious goes to work, and who knows how it.
Yeah, it's
Resolves.
really weird the
It is
way
really
a
weird.
writer.
But there's an element of mystery too. To like, so I think writers are always flummoxed when someone says, "How did you write this?" And the answer is usually, you will never want to say this because it sounds pretentious, but it's like, I don't know. I thought about it, but who knows how
I
it
don't know.
happened, right? All right, I know
Yeah.
you gave this some thought beforehand, so this shouldn't be too impossible, but an album or movie or both that you recommend without reservation.
Yeah, this was a hard one. Because all those questions of like, what's the one thing you would take with you on a desert island and all that, I'm always like, well, it depends on, but I'm going to pick one because you told me to pick one, and it's a weird one, but I'm going to pick it. Die Hard. I love that movie. I think it's the best action movie ever. I feel like it's got a whole bunch of, it's the best. It's got great storytelling. It's got humor. It's got awesome pacing. I love Bruce Willis, so Die Hard.
Love it. And the obligatory follow-up to that, because there's so much online contention, is that, in your opinion, a Christmas movie or not?
It is a Christmas movie.
I agree. I'm sure you've seen or heard, like, it's trivial, but there are people that block horns on.
I have.
Like, I think Bruce Willis recently, or maybe not recently, weighed in and said, it's not a Christmas movie. It's like, of course
It is a Christmas movie.
All
Of
right.
course it's a Christmas movie.
Right.
Whatever.
Exactly. Okay, another impossible but fun one. If you were to nominate the best first or last line of any book or even story ever, what would you toss into the hat?
I am going to go cliche on this one, and I'm sure that like tons of people have already answered this, but the last line of The Great Gatsby is one that I have written down many times and reflected on, and if I was a tattoo kind of person, I'd consider wanting that or part of that on my tattoo. But I just love that last line, and I can't quote it because I will get it wrong, but the idea of like the boats beating against the current and the idea of the past. I'm a little obsessed with writing about the past and how it comes back to haunt us and how we can't ever escape it. And so that line really resonates with me. There's a reason why a lot of people love that last line, because it's
I would say, if so, yeah, it has come up before. I would nominate that probably for myself, and it somehow manages to not only encapsulate the book, but it encapsulates why writers write. It encapsulates why, as humans, we have this tendency to have nostalgia and obsess about what we could or should have done differently. I mean, it's everything. So I'm with you.
It is. It also has that element of we are this like tiny little blip in time, and time is just going to keep on going whether we're with it or not. So
thank you for that, because I've never expressed it that way, but that's a crucial element of it too. The idea of these little boats and the tide is. And also, I've invoked. It reminds me of one of my other favorite Moby Dick. This notion of the tide going on regardless of what has just happened. So right on. Okay, how about an underrated author, an author you think should get more recognition that you'd love to give a shout out to?
Yeah. So to me, I'm gonna say I want to talk about a type of writing that I feel like is underrated, and that is flash fiction. You had talked about in my bio that I used to edit SmokeLong Quarterly, which is an online flash fiction publication. And I did that for like 11 years. And so I really got into flash fiction. I love it. I think it's an amazing form of writing, and I don't feel like it gets the respect that it deserves. And there are so many really awesome flash fiction writers writing today. And I don't know. I mean, I can tell you stories that I read for SmokeLong probably like 10 years ago that I still think about, that are probably a half a page long, like if you put them on a piece of paper. So I just think that like really talented flash writers can invoke an entire world and an entire history of a person in like 300 words, and that is really cool.
Absolutely.
So I think that's an underrated form that more people should read.
Yeah, I hear you. So two things. So folks, check out SmokeLong Quarterly
Yes,
without
absolutely.
hesitation. Tara, is there a particular piece of flash fiction for those that are uninitiated or skeptical that you would say, read this to understand the essence? You know, not the story, but a flash fiction piece that you just would say, read this one.
I don't know that I would pick. I really think like I'm biased because I edited it for so long, and
Yeah.
Chris Allen, who's the current editor, is awesome too. But really, just go there and check out that. I mean, there's just so much great, and we have all our archives for free. It goes back through like 2003, I think.
That's
We're
great.
almost 20 years, so there's
Okay.
tons on there. But yeah,
All right. SmokeLong Quarterly, folks. Check it out. All right,
smokelong.
the antithesis of flash fiction, our next question that I have to ask everyone, why have you not read Moby Dick? Or if you have, is there a classic that you've been meaning to get around to and haven't?
So I have read Moby Dick. Thank you very much. And my cousin bought me this, one of those posters last year that have like the 100 classic novels, and like you scratch them off as you read them. And I
Mm,
had read like half of them on there, so I was pretty proud of myself.
yeah.
And it's hanging up in my office at work right now, which I haven't been to since March of last year. So like I can't even tell you what's on there that I like haven't read yet. But Art and I had read the Christmas Carol, the Charles Dickens Christmas Carol, to our son this past Christmas. And, you know, I was never really a Dickens fan, but rereading that, like, there was something about his prose that I just was like very drawn to this time. And so I thought, like, you know, I should probably go back and read a Dickens novel at some point and
Mhm.
see if like my tastes have changed in that way. So I think I'd pick him.
Right on. And, you know, I just happened to notice, I saw a recent interview with George Saunders, and he named Christmas Carol, I think, as his favorite work or the most influential work. And that really, I would never have guessed that, but that spoke volumes to me that someone I
Yeah.
esteemed was him without hesitation, you know, signaled that particular book out.
Interesting.
Yeah.
There's a scene in there where they're describing like a Christmas party, like a ball, and they're dancing. And the way that he describes that dancing scene, like the movement and the way the sentences are, like I don't mean to geek out, but Art and I were both like, "Holy moly, this is amazing!"
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No, he had game. He had game. He endorsed. All right. You know, believe it or not, folks watching, I edited a longer bio because there's a lot of accomplishment with this writer. But I think we have a sense from that bio. But if you could say or would want to say, is there a single theme that your work seems or tends to address?
yeah, so I talked about the past, you know, like I'm very interested in the past and like how we bury secrets and like what that does to us. And also like I'm really interested in what I call the ripple effect of violence. So like what happens to you when something bad happens to somebody else and how that affects you. Um, and I write a lot about creepy houses and like creepy places and like the energy of a place and how it affects people and that sort of stuff. So I don't know, those kinds of things. I'm also really into like communication stuff, miscommunication stuff, I guess. So like, you know how like you feel like you know somebody really well and then you realize you like don't know them at all. Like I always think that's really an interesting phenomenon for humans.
Okay.
So those
So
are some.
shameless self plug for those that are now intrigued and want an entree into the Tara Laskowski experience. Where would you point them to check out your work?
Oh, I guess my debut novel, The One Night Gone, which you mentioned earlier, it kind of has all those things. So it's the creepy beach house, atmospheric off-season beach town, woman investigating a cold case disappearance. There's a creepy Ferris wheel carnival kind of thing going on.
Right on.
Women backstabbing each other. Yeah, it's great.
Okay. You heard it. You heard it from the writer herself, folks. The next questions I've gotten in the habit of combining because they're both very different and there's very similar themes. But the notion of writing routines and writer's block. Do you have a writing routine? Do you believe in them? Writer's block? Do you believe in it? Experienced it, etc. Like your thoughts on those two big topics.
Yeah, and I always find this interesting when other people answer this too, because I feel like writers are so different in this way. I used to think that people who said, write every day were ridiculous, because I'm like, there's no way I can't write every day. Until I started writing novels, and then I realized I have to write every day. Number one, to like make my deadline, and number two, because I have to keep all these people like in my head, right? And I have to remember kind of what I'm doing, which is very different from flash fiction, where you can see the entire story on a piece of paper. So before COVID, when I was commuting into work, I would take my lunch breaks and write. And then I write a lot at night when I'm putting our son to bed, because it's like kind of a time when our house is quiet and dark, and it's a pretty good place and time to write if I'm not too exhausted. And now, since I've been working from home full time, I tend to try to write in the mornings, like when I would have been driving in, because I like to get it over with in the morning when my brain is still functioning. So.
Get it over with. I love it.
Yes, get it over with, and then your whole day is like, all right, I wrote today. Yeah, baby.
I'll just add. First of all, it's very refreshing and inspiring. But I think a lot of people don't understand that there's a obsessive and physical element, like the literal act of writing. I think a lot of people that aren't writers or don't understand is some of it is like working out. I mean, it becomes something you kind of have to not force yourself to do, but I mean, there's a discipline involved. It just doesn't just happen, or that happens very seldom. And the reality is, to put a piece of work together, it's day after day of steady labor that adds up to something.
I agree. And I think the idea of writer's block is a romanticized version in some ways of the writing process. I like the idea of the muse, and like I have to wait for the muse to come, which I don't agree with. But I do think that writers can get like in a place where writing's really hard and you feel like you can't do anything when you come. That happens to me a lot. And so but I feel like I just have to write through that.
Yeah.
Whether that's like, okay, I give myself permission to write the worst scene in the world today. And as long as there's words on the page when I'm done, that's like something I can work with, So I kind of lie to myself a lot.
I invoked a quote. It comes up a lot, but I love it. I don't know who we can attribute it to, but the notion of sometimes I hate writing, but I always love having written. And I think that means that's it in a nutshell.
Yes, that is it. Definitely.
Okay. All right. Change of pace. Talk about a significant setback, artistic or otherwise, that looking back on maybe helped shape the trajectory of where you are now.
Yeah. I had a hard time with thinking about this one because, I really feel like the setbacks have been fairly minor, compared to like some of the horror stories that you hear. But this past year has been like so difficult for everyone, obviously. But I think like creative people have had a really hard time with it. I know a lot of friends who can't write, who haven't been able to really write at all. I have been, but just because I have a deadline on my book due. So like I have to write, but it hasn't been easy, and it hasn't honestly been very fun most times. Like I've just had a really hard time. Like, and I've heard a lot of people say like your second book is really hard because when you're writing your debut, you've got all the time in the world. No one's waiting for it. You can perfect it. But the second one, they're waiting for that. They're expecting it. And there's something very like scary about that. And then to have to do that during the pandemic has been not very fun. So
Yeah.
I feel like I'm going through a setback to some degree right now.
Right. Well, and like we talked about before we came on, I think it's fair to say that we're certainly as a country we're heading in the right direction. So there's some light emanating through that dark tunnel. So let's hope
There is, yes.
let's hope we
Yeah.
are headed in the right direction.
And it's very important to keep producing art during dark times. So
that's right. Absolutely. And on behalf of the readership, thank you for taking it seriously and putting in the time. We need it. We need you on that mountain. All right. This is a tough one too, but I think very illuminating. Define or explain what literary success means to you.
Yeah, so I was in this group of authors my debut year. So it was all these like debut authors on Facebook for 2019. And these were people that like, it was a wide range. Like I was the, crime writer, but there were romance writers, there were sci-fi people, there were literary fiction people, big 5 publishers, like super small presses, so I saw this, like, it was really interesting because I saw this like wide range of different paths, right? And it made me really realize that like everybody's path to success is, and what people define as success is totally different. And like that it's okay, so like one of our authors might have gotten like a New York Times book review, the other one is struggling to like market her book on a blog, so it was very total wide range of success stuff. And I realized that like I don't really like to like say like this is when this happens I'll have made it, because I don't know, I feel like there'll always be then one more thing, like if only I could publish a book I would be an author, and then you publish it and you're like, yeah, but if only I could publish it with a big 5 publisher, then I would really make it, and it just keeps going and going and going and going. So I feel like for me the successful moments are just like having this like Raider community, meeting these cool people, like being able to like just keep doing it in whatever form that is really cool. I mean, of course I would love to be able to like quit my job and like write full time, but
Right.
Who wouldn't?
Right.
But if you can't, I don't know, just trying to find I'm telling myself this, like trying to find the joy in it, and just do the ness of it, I guess, is success, right? Because there's so many people quit.
That's right.
It's very easy to quit. So
yeah, and I think it's fair to say, and I certainly have said this probably too many times, but if there's not joy in it on some level for the writer, how can they expect there to be joy in it for the reader?
Right.
There has to be some love of craft, or you're doing it for all the wrong reasons, and you probably could quit. So is there something that you wish you had known as a writer 10 or even 20 years ago?
I think it is this idea, like I said, of that you're really never gonna like be in a place where you've solved all the problems and you've conquered all the things. When I was in grad school at Mason, it was like, oh man, if I could just get a short story published, like how awesome would that be? And then it's like, wow, could you imagine like having a book published? And then everything would be awesome. And then you get your book published and you're like, well, no, how do I get people to buy it? Like why isn't anybody coming to my events? And then I was like, well, if I can get an agent, that would be awesome. And then I get an agent and I'm like, well, what if my book doesn't sell now that I have an agent? And then your book sells and you're like, what if it doesn't get reviewed anywhere? What if my sales are so bad that no one wants to buy a second book? And you just like, so I think having that perspective helps, like when you're like I don't know, maybe it wouldn't help, but it's something that I feel like I've learned, having gone through a long process of like, there's always going to be, and the people that you want to be, like you see an author and you're like, oh man, if I could only be where they are, they are looking at someone else and wishing they were there, so it's just this.
Yeah, no, and you really kind of summarize, I think the direction we're also heading in the literary scene, which is I don't think it's necessarily nostalgic or an illusion to say that maybe 20, 30, 40 years ago, there was less onus on the author. Like now you really can say without sarcasm, writing the book is the easy part. Then the machinery sets in of promotion and marketing and et cetera. So yeah, I mean, gosh, that could be a whole side interview series of just like, yeah, okay, you've already written the book, now what? And of course there are books written about
Right.
how to handle that. But it's good to just have that perspective, right? And I think it always comes back to, if you're writing in a way that satisfies your own kind of desires, that has to be enough on some level, or you're always going to be miserable.
Yes, exactly.
All right. So in conclusion, a 1 minute or so exhortation from a beginning writer that's looking for advice, what would you say?
So I guess I would say read a lot in whatever area that you want to publish in, because people are going to want to know who you are as a writer. Even if you don't quite know yet, start to figure that out. Have a lot of patience and grow a thick skin, because you're going to get rejected a lot and you're going to have to wait a lot, and it's really hard. But I think the biggest thing is to like find your people, like, and I mean that on two levels. I mean, find your readership. Like you don't write to please everyone in the world, because everyone in the world, that would be a really boring book. So find the people that want to read the books or the things that you want to write and are very passionate about. And also find your tribe of writer people, because I feel like we can't exist in this business alone. And oh my gosh, like my writer friends are just, I love them. So, I wouldn't be where I am without them. Like it's, you have to do it in an authentic way. I think, become part of a community. You have to like give as much as you get, I guess, and give more, I think, than you get. Like give with like intention of like, I just want to do this because you're awesome, or like, I don't expect anything in return, but so I don't know. I just feel like the community is something that it's probably the most valuable part of doing all of this, because they're awesome. People are awesome. So
yeah, well, I agree. I couldn't agree more, and I appreciate that, because that's part of kind of the impetus behind the programming that 1455 does, which is this idea of cultivating and celebrating community and appreciating and being a part of it. And I think if there's one theme that emerges from all of these interviews that we've been doing, it is that people, I think, overlook, especially in this kind of virtual internet era, that being part of a community and actively part of it is everything. So I appreciate you adding your voice of wisdom to that growing chorus of affirmation that's really critical.
it really is. I mean, doing things like this, and I don't know, just getting to know other writers and reading their work and spreading that, I don't know. I just feel like for me, having like another writer read something I've written and talk, say something to me about it, I'm like, oh, so nice, thank you. Like you took the time. There's so many people writing out there,
That's right.
So.
That's right. Well, Tara, thank you so much. I know we'll see you again in some form, but appreciate you taking the time. I loved your answers. And on a parting shot, I'll put this on the write-up when we put it on our website, but how will people find you online?
Oh, it's just taralaskowski.com.
Okay, folks, check out SmokeLong Quarterly. Check out Tara's website. And thank you again. We'll see you soon.
Yes, I look forward to buying you a beer at some point in the future.
Cheers to that. I look forward to it as well.
All right, take care.
Right.
Thanks.
Bye.